Hello friends, this week we are going to analyze chapter 23 of Bakuran, where we will see the continuation of the epic confrontation between the biting cyborg Jack Hanma and the prehistoric caveman Pickle. In the previous chapter, we see Pickle walking calmly through the streets of Tokyo, attracting the attention of passers-by with his imposing figure and striking attire. Despite his dirty and worn appearance, Pickle stands out for his enormous stature and musculature, causing awe and fear in those who see him. During his walk, Pickle notices a pile of garbage bags with 3 birds searching for food. Without hesitation, he launches into the attack and captures the birds with great precision, devouring them quickly under the gaze of the people passing by. After satisfying his hunger, Pickle crouches down to drink water from a puddle on the ground, causing repulsion and concern among the passers-by. The situation takes an interesting turn when Pickle recognizes 2 figures approaching from afar: the elderly Mitsunari and the giant Jack Hanma. The crowd, surprised, watches as these 2 titans meet in the middle of the street. Jack approaches Pickle and, instead of attacking him, embraces him fraternally, expressing how much he has thought about him since their last fight. Pickle, initially surprised, responds to the hug. The chapter ends with a moving image of Jack Hanma hugging Pickle, showing a deep and sincere connection between these 2 strong fighters. This week's chapter begins exactly where the last one ended, with Jack hugging Pickle tightly and expressing how much he had wanted to see him again. Jack refers to this prehistoric man as his predecessor. In this panel, we can see an incredible difference in size between the 2 fighters. It seems that Jack has undergone another surgery to increase his size. The people present couldn't understand the reason behind such an emotional hug, nor the meaning of the words directed at Pickle. Even Mitsunari was confused and just stood there watching what was happening. However, Jack paid no attention to the others. His focus was entirely on the caveman. Jack asks Pickle to listen carefully, while resting his large hands on his shoulders. The caveman, who also seemed very surprised, remained motionless. Jack confesses that it is thanks to Pickle that he was able to perfect his bite and reach this far. Pickle, despite not understanding what Jack was saying, seemed to be very attentive to everything he said. Jack begins to remember that memorable day in the underground arena, where one of the most important fights of his life took place. The day he faced the prehistoric caveman, the primitive man who defeated great fighters like Retsu Katsumi and even his brother Baki. Jack tells us how, despite not understanding each other, they had a beautiful fight. Jack corrects himself by saying that the encounter cannot be categorized as a simple fight. In reality, it was a fusion, a union between the desires of these 2 warriors. At that moment, Jack Hanma and Pickle fused, their warrior spirits becoming one for a moment. That intense clash of bites led them to unite as rivals, and at the end of that encounter, the result was unquestionable. Jack Hanma had lost. This was clearly evident on his face. However, his defeat was not definitive for him, as at that moment his fight was not yet over, despite being completely immobile and unconscious. As Jack recounted the memory, everyone listened attentively to the story, while more and more people gathered around these 2 giants. Jack reveals that at that moment, he couldn't accept his defeat, even though Pickle had surpassed him. To that prehistoric being, he had become food. That's why Pickle had tied him by one of his feet at the top of the building with the intention of coming back for him when he got hungry. That action caused Jack great pain. His pride as a warrior had been completely destroyed. Because of this, that day became a memory he will never forget. He will never be able to erase from his mind how much he cried upon learning that harsh truth. For him, it had been an authentic fight, but Pickle was simply trying to secure his lunch. Obviously, there was no malice in Pickle, yet for Jack, it had been deeply humiliating. The old man was completely surprised by this story, as although he knew the history, he had never heard it directly from Jack. The cyborg, with a serious tone, asks Pickle to pay close attention to what he has to say, despite knowing that he likely won't understand his words. Jack asks him to listen, regardless of whether he comprehends, as it is crucial for him to convey this message at this precise moment. Jack reveals to Pickle that there is a piece of music he would like to hear with his own ears, and a work of art he would like to see with his own eyes. Although Pickle didn't understand the words, he seemed very attentive. Noticing this, Jack gives a small smile and confesses to Pickle that his greatest wish is to hear him cry uncontrollably while displaying a great expression of despair and helplessness on his face. Jack Hanma reveals that his greatest desire at this moment is to witness these 2 things. With a more serious tone, he tells Pickle that, even if it's just for a moment, he would love to enjoy that great spectacle. In the next panel, we can clearly see that Jack is noticeably taller than Pickle. I used to think it was a drawing error, as often happens, but if we look closely, throughout the entire chapter, Jack has been drawn taller than Pickle. It is clear that he has undergone another surgery. After hearing the cyborg's words, Pickle begins to react immediately. His eyes open wide, and his hair stands on end. A small change that everyone present notices right away. They realize how the caveman reacts to the words of the man in front of him. Jack, with a mocking smile, tells Pickle that with his hair standing on end, he almost matches his size. The cyborg confesses to Pickle that this time will be very different from their first encounter. Mitsunari interrupts Jack, telling him that even though he is now much bigger than this prehistoric man, Pickle may not see it that way. The old man reminds him that Pickle was used to facing truly gigantic opponents in his time, so he would likely see Jack as a small dinosaur. Size differences have never been a problem for someone who hunted dinosaurs much larger than himself, like the T-Rex. Jack immediately turns to the old man and says that at this moment, he only wants to fulfill his dream. Jack says that he doesn't care what type of opponent it is, whether it's a lion, a shark, or a hyena. He wants to try his teeth against them all to test their bite and satisfy his hunger. The passers-by, hearing these words, begin to murmur at such declarations. Mitsunari warns Jack that he should be more careful with what he says, as people were starting to mock him. However, this doesn't matter at all to Jack, who, while ignoring those comments, mentions that he wants to fight Pickle again, testing himself in a new competition of bites while their spirits and hearts intertwine. This fight needs to happen as soon as possible to finally close that chapter of his life. Suddenly, Jack is interrupted by Pickle, who lunges from behind and bites his left trapezius. This action immediately puts everyone present on alert, who watch in astonishment and fear at what just happened. The caveman had taken Jack by surprise and delivered a powerful bite very close to the neck, just as a lion or tiger would. Thus ends this week's chapter. And well, in this chapter we finally see the true intentions of Jack Hanma. Despite his respect and appreciation for Pickle, he also wants to take revenge for the humiliation he suffered in their first encounter. But without a doubt, the most shocking revelation is that Jack Hanma has gotten taller. The last time his height was mentioned, he measured 2 meters and 43 centimeters. In this week's chapter, Jack seems to have increased by about 15 or 20 centimeters, which is monstrous even for him. It was assumed he had reached his limit, but it seems that word doesn't exist in his dictionary. However, it appears that Pickle doesn't care about the size difference. After all, he has faced creatures much larger and heavier than himself. Nonetheless, he seems genuinely excited to face Jack again, seeing him not just as food but now as a true rival with whom to measure strength. I find it amusing that Jack has put so much effort into surpassing Pickle, and in the end, it doesn't matter to Pickle whether Jack is bigger or smaller. Jack's obsession with becoming bigger and having the strongest bite is thanks to Pickle, whom he calls his predecessor. It's likely that Jack believes he has now surpassed Pickle, and that's why he has chosen him as his next rival. The question is whether Pickle is now stronger than before. There could be a possibility that he is now stronger than he was. Remember, he is a being that was still developing. In other words, he was still a young specimen. The bite Pickle gave Jack could be the start of the fight or perhaps just a friendly bite, a way to let Jack know they can fight at any time. Most likely, the biting cyborg will request that the fight take place in the underground arena, so everyone can see him defeat the prehistoric caveman. Anyway, there won't be a new chapter next week, so I might upload a different video, perhaps discussing theories. If you want to participate in the video, leave your questions, opinions, or theories about Baki Rahan in the comments section. And well, friends, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. I hope you have a nice day or night. See you soon.